Good morning again. Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing another video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know. And unfortunately, I have an emergency to report in this video. I have never said this in any of my videos. It's not the kind of emergency you would call 911 to report, unfortunately, because there's nothing they can do about this particular one. And it's such a huge deal that I really honestly hope if you understand the message of this video, you communicate it to someone you think might be affected by it. So here's the thing. Here's what's going on. It is based on a little bit of background. I'm going to share that background. You may remember from school in history class where you learned about the origins of the United States country, the nation of the United States of America, how it was founded with a Revolutionary War against the British largely, and the settlers, the early European settlers of the U.S. fled, for the most part, they fled persecution. And the way that persecution in Europe manifested, the way it actually looked and played out, was they could not get a fair trial. They were persecuted for their religious beliefs, for political beliefs, and they fled the continent because of the quality of life that was being imposed upon them. So we are right back at it. Long story short, the reasons why these people left Europe, largely, besides for business reasons, which also happened in fairness, the reasons are back. Okay, so you are no longer allowed to get a fair trial. Okay, hear me out. I have evidence. I have actual evidence, and this is the emergency. The emergency is, for example, it's going to be kind of a funny example, sad and funny, but mostly funny, I hope. Maybe you've heard of the show Family Guy. Big fan. Seth MacFarlane is like 6 different voices in that show. It was on the air for decades, and this is a connected subject. It's very connected. There is one episode that explored the subject of statutory rape. This is also on par today because I just made another video that connects with this subject. And they made a very serious mistake in that episode. If you look it up, I'm sure it's easy to find out which one it is. I don't know which number off the top of my head, but you can find it, I'm sure, and watch it. You should watch it. Because in that episode, the statement is asserted that statutory rape boils down to proving that sex had happened with a minor. That's the end of it. That's what they said in the show. I'm not kidding. They said once the girl's age is established, the crime is established. Now understand, here's your emergency, that you have, by saying that in the show or outside the show, you have just relegated courtrooms across the country to be useless, to be obsolete, useless, superficial. They have no more function anymore. If you're saying that any crime can be determined out of context, regardless of circumstances, regardless of extenuating circumstances, mitigating circumstances, explanations, whether or not there was damage, whether or not there was an agreement, whether or not it was invited. If you're saying that any particular crime does not need a courtroom, such as in the case where a minor, all she has to do is prove her age, and that's the end of the story, you have just committed the same crime that drove people out of Europe. And if you don't believe me, I will give you time to think about it. Why don't you just consider what the world looks like without courtrooms? Why do we have courtrooms? Okay, let me just explore this for a second. I don't want it to be a long video. Why do courtrooms exist? It's because sometimes there's an appearance that isn't quite what it actually is, right? The appearance of impropriety isn't necessarily impropriety. Sometimes people start a rumor. Sometimes an actual crime has taken place, so we want to figure out who did it. But most importantly, it gives you an opportunity to explain yourself. You get your day in court. You get a chance, a fair, reasonable chance to explain that maybe you were invited. Maybe it wasn't trespassing. Maybe you were there legitimately. Maybe there's more to the picture than the authorities in the instant you were arrested could see. Okay. If you want to abandon justice, if you want to say that armed thugs, such as the ICE agents who are patrolling our country right now and arresting people, prosecuting them independently of courtrooms, if we're being honest, that's exactly what's happening. People are dying in jail. Then we are enemies. I don't want to fight you on this. I just want you to understand what justice is and why it's important. Why it was so important that people fled Europe to come to this country because of the promise of freedom, because of the promise of a fair shake. Okay, that's what it is. And if you're telling me that all she has to do is prove her age, for example, and this is just one example, every single law follows suit, every single one of them. There are no crimes out of context. It's a contradiction of terms. That cannot be justice. There has to be an opportunity for investigation, substantiation of claims, and due process. Okay, justice is the due process. It's not showing up, making some kind of rush decision, and blowing people away. And that's what you're talking about. If all she has to do is prove her age. Okay? I want everybody to take this very seriously. This is a state of emergency. You have lost all your rights. You have lost your day in court. And if you don't think that's serious, you just hang on a minute. Trust me, it's very serious. Reach out if you like with questions or comments to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. Thank you.